I see a lot of familiar faces, so this is fun. I'll take you back to 2019 when I was running Northwestern Mutual as a managing partner. I got handed this book, and it was actually by Matt Heckman, my top advisor at the time, and he goes, Josh, I think this would be really good for you. And I was like, cool, I'll give it a shot, read it. Loved it, loved the structure because my brain works far more visionary. I think big picture, 30,000 foot view, and like to build a parachute on the way down, jumping out of a plane. This book is the exact opposite of that. It's actually helping us build that parachute well before we go down. I was just telling John here though, I didn't actually read the back of it because I'm too ADD. I didn't read the epilogue that would have told me that I could have hired a professional implementer to help us implement this system into the company, because I would have gladly stroked that check. So I went about my way of trying to implement it on our own, and quickly realized that I had a leadership team that was great. However, they all thought like I did. And it started as I started reading this and then the follow-up book called Rocket Fuel that really explained the visionary integrator role. And it really occurred to me as I'm sitting around this table, no wonder we talk about a lot of great stuff and never get anything done. We have a lot of great ideas and never get anything done. So I went on the hunt for an integrator, and I'm happy to say that she's still with me today. She was the one employee I took from my previous company because I knew to build again that I would have to be able to have someone with that left brain to help me get to the next level in new businesses. So this book is really just an introduction. I'll explain the other tools that you guys are going to get. Those are all in the bags over there. This is one of the tools, whether you guys choose to do anything with me or not, that's not the point of today. This tool is phenomenal. So this is what we call the Vision Traction Organizer. And I'm going to go through it in some of the PowerPoint today. I'm really going to try and distill about 2 hours worth of content into an hour so we can get to questions. What's up, buddy? Which ones? These?
Open carry.
That's right. That's legal in Wisconsin, right? Yeah. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to give you the real. What I realized after getting trained on this, so I'll go back to a little bit where I didn't implement it with an implementer. I did it on my own. And after getting trained on it, I realized that I maybe have gotten 20% of it right. Because the book only gives us about 6 to 8 of the top tools that EOS implements, there's 20 tools in total that we work with companies. So just know that the tools that you get out of the book aren't all the tools that EOS has at its disposal. EOS is implemented in now over 100,000 companies worldwide. The average that they're seeing in rate of return year over year is 34.4%. That is not a guarantee, but that's how much real revenue growth is being seen through just structure. Just being able to put the right people in the right seats, have a system and a framework for us to work on, because let's be honest, most of us business owners or leaders are really figuring things out on the fly. And we built businesses, built a leadership team, built whatever we built by figuring it out. And a lot of trial by fire. There's no blueprint for a lot of what we've done. This whole thing, I get to talk to Gino every once in a while, who's the author of the book. And he jokes that some Harvard scholar will come to him and say, you know, I love your system. It's just too simple. And he has a 2-word response. Thank you. Because that's what he wanted from it, is that any company, any tenure could actually implement the system in a foolproof way. So we'll talk a little bit through that. So I want to say this, that when I left Northwestern, my mission got really clear. I started helping entrepreneurs on a large scale, mostly on leadership, because that's my background. What I quickly found out was that all businesses, all leadership teams have 2 major issues. One, human development. It's the time to be able to pour in and spend with our people. And then secondly, the systems and processes to help us scale and grow. And so that's when I took on the mantle of becoming an EOS implementer to help continue to grow the businesses that need the structure and growth. So for me, any discovery call that I go to is like, which of those 2 are your major issue? Because I know you have 136 little issues underneath those 2 things. And the goal is to continue to solve issues at the root cause. So what I found with my leadership team while I was at Northwestern is we get really good at solving issues, but they're usually symptoms of the issue, of the root cause. And so we feel really good about our coming to a decision on moving forward on something, but we didn't actually solve the root cause of the issue, so it would keep coming back. And so one of the things that we do real briefly is actually teach you a system to go through issues. So these are common frustrations in businesses: lack of control, profit variability, people. How many people have people issues? And if you're not raising your hands, you're not being honest with me. All right? What's that? It is a trick question. Everyone's got people issues. So it's not that they're bad people. It's that people are people. And they have their own agendas. And they have their own lives. And so that's a common issue that we're coming up with across leadership teams all the time. Hitting the ceiling. So hitting the ceiling isn't just a company thing. It's a departmental thing. It's an individual thing. So when we talk about hitting the ceiling, is a lot of times you plateau, and great companies, great leadership teams will either bust through that ceiling, they'll stay on that plateau line, or if they don't change something, they're going to end up declining. And again, that's not just the company. That can be at a departmental level, and that can be at an individual level. Just think about your workout routine. For anyone that works out, there's times that you will plateau. And if you don't change something up, you're going to decline instead of ascend. Same thing in business. And then there's those points of frustrations where we feel like nothing's working. So your business is always at the center of this model. I get asked often, Josh, have you ever worked with this type of business? And what the question behind that question is, will this work for my business? And that point is always this: this system was built to be agnostic across all industries. And so if I haven't personally worked in that industry, one of the other 1,000 implementers has. But it truly doesn't matter. I always tell teams when I go into this, like 90% of the answers are going to come from you, the leadership team. The leadership team, you know your business well better than anyone else. About 8% can come from me and my outside experience in running 3 different businesses as well. And 2%, neither of us might know, and we got to have the humility to say, I don't know. And then I can go to the other 1,000 implementers and go, hey, has anyone ever run into this situation? And I always get an answer from at least 3 of them. And that doesn't happen that often, but at the top of your business is the vision. So we all know how important vision is, but let me give you a little context with it. Your vision as a leader or a leadership team has to be big enough that everyone in your organization can fit their vision within yours. So oftentimes people don't leave, not necessarily because they don't even like you, trust you, or any of that nature. It's actually because your vision isn't big enough. They have a bigger vision that can't fit inside yours, so they found a different leader or a different business that they can fit their vision inside of. And so our vision, our 10-year vision, or wherever your distant vision is, we call it a 10-year vision, but it really can be anywhere between 5 and 30 years, however far you can think out. That vision has to be big, hairy, and audacious enough that every employee can fit their vision inside. So vision is always at the top. That casts the nets. The second part of the puzzle is the people. And we call it right people, right seats. And that comes from Good to Great. Anyone read that book? Classic book by Jim Collins. He quantified right people, right seats. We'll get into that in a little bit. The third component is data. We can't run a great company without great data. The problem I see is twofold. Either companies don't have the right data or they have too much data. And you could sit there and go, Josh, how could too much data be a problem? Well, I work for a 160-year-old company. I can tell you for a fact that too much data can be a problem because we're chasing the wrong things. So we got to make sure that there's a right data component, that we're tracking the right things, right KPIs that actually matter to you and your leadership team. And we dig in on that to create a scorecard. Then there's issues. Like I asked before, there's always issues, and it's not just people. There's always issues going on. I once showed up to a team I'm working with out of Cleveland for a quarterly conversation, quarterly day. And they said, hey, I said, your issues list is blank. And they said, yeah, we can't think of any. I asked one question in our check-in. I said, well, it's two. I said, what's working and what's not working? There's 5 people at the table. By the time we got done with that just check-in, there was 20 issues on the list. All I had to ask was what's not working. So if you have no issues on the list, that in and of itself is an issue. Because what you're not doing is getting it out of your head onto a document to make sure that you can actually talk about it as a leadership team. Because someone on that leadership team may be able to help you solve that issue. But if we don't get it out of our head and we just run from fire to fire, that's a problem. Next is process. How many people have SOPs? You just said, that was a deep breath, Sean. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So that's the thing though, is SOPs can be overly complicated. Again, came from an overly complex company. And no one's gonna read a 300-page SOP document. So it's creating SOPs that are very simple and that everyone follows so that you know the right job is getting done the right way every time. And that's part of it, is having strong processes. And lastly is traction. This is where the rubber meets the road. Traction is that everyone is actually following your lead. Everyone is following your processes, you were tracking the right data, and we're actually rowing in the same direction towards a common goal or vision. This is a famous quote, I believe it's from Gino. Yeah, it is. Vision without traction is a hallucination. And it's very true. If we don't get that vision from the top all the way down, and they don't know what they're marching towards, it's a big problem, because then you'll have people rowing in different directions or sprinting off enthusiastically in the wrong direction. And that happens a lot. So the goal is, when I meet with companies, they're usually, and we do a team scorecard, or a little assessment. And it basically, what we average out is the majority of businesses are operating at about 20% of their capacity, succeeding despite themselves. Our goal is to get to 80% or better. And you may ask, Josh, why not 100%? It's utopia. We never get there. If anyone gets there or says they're there, probably lying. All right, I'm gonna give you a couple tools in here in each of these 6 quadrants. So the 8 questions I alluded to, which are in the Vision Traction Organizer, I think they're on the screen here, so I'll just flip through here quick. So yeah, here's the VTO. The first of the questions are, what are our core values? When I go into most businesses, they have core values. They may even have them on the walls. What I test is, how are they actually living them? Because I'm not going in there to tell them that they're wrong, because they're your core values, but what I do want to test is, are they actually being lived out throughout the organization? Anyone want to take a guess at what Enron's #1 core value was? Profit. You would think that it was profit, but no. Their actual stated #1 core value was integrity. That was their #1 stated core value. Obviously did not act very integral. So when we go in, it's testing the core values to make sure they're actually lived by. When I was at Northwestern as well, I got this big word list. I don't know if you guys have put together core values this way, but it's a bunch of adjectives. And you figure out, and we work through it as a leadership team, of what do we embody? And the problem with that is that it's not really tested. They're more aspirational than they are real. So has anyone been down to Vortex? Not the new place, no? I would encourage you to go down there sometime. They do visits. You could bring your team or company, just get in touch with them. They do tours all the time. I know they fill up pretty quickly, but I would encourage you guys to do that. It is one of the places that I've been where you actually feel the core values the moment you walk into the building. It's phenomenal. And you'll also notice that their core values, they have 4. None of them are one word. And that was something that I learned as well. It's not just an adjective list, it's what do you represent? So for instance, one of their core values is be the buffalo. Does anyone know that analogy? What?
Turns into the storm.
That's right. Cows run away, most animals run away. The American bison or buffalo runs into the storm because they know they're going to get through it faster. And you can tell that Vortex, as quickly as they've grown, they compete against companies that are over 100 years old. They're only 20 years old. They've truly run into the storm. And I probably have the rest of them memorized as well. But it's really about testing. Then we want to know what the core focus is of the company. This could be, seen as mission statement, hedgehog principle. That's been called a different things. The reason we call it core focus is because it comes from the core of the company or core of the business, why it was started to begin with. So it clarifies this is our purpose, cause, or passion. And then what is our niche, or niche, however you pronounce that. Again, I explained the 10-year target. Doesn't have to be 10 years. I work that company in Cleveland that I work with. He's retiring, the owner, in 2030. So their vision is set out to 2030. Started working with them 2 years ago, so it was a 7-year vision. So anywhere between 5 and 30 years, but again, as big as possible. And we want that not to be a long vision that you might read to yourself, but rather what's a core, one-sentence vision that we're pointing everyone towards. Next to the questions, what's our market strategy or marketing strategy? Who's our target market? What makes us unique? Let me give you an idea here. So there's 3 uniques here. If your competitor has 2 of the 3, but not the third one, that's still 3 uniques. Because in some industries, like my former industry, we do a lot of the same things. But what makes us unique? That third thing could be the differentiator between us and any of our other competitors. And then, do you have a proven process? Not every company has this. EOS has this, and actually, one of the documents you'll get is this. This is our proven process. The proven process should be a one-pager that you can give to people. Not every company has it, about 50% do. It may not be quantifiable in your line of work. And then same thing for guarantee. We have a guarantee. Doesn't mean you have to. But you guys decide that as a leadership team. And then the last piece of the vision side of this page is the 3-year picture. Oops. We set a future date, 3 years from today or end of year, whatever it may be. What's our revenue target? What's our profit target? What's a specific measurable that we have there? And then what does it look like? Again, this is a picture. So for instance, Josh had a vision for this place. How long ago did you have this vision before you built it? 10 years ago. Okay. So you had that kind of percolating in your mind for 10 years. About how soon did you tell the team?
3 years ago.
Right. So in that 3-year picture, we're going to build this beautiful building with a training center, a beautiful bar, and upstairs space. Like he was visualizing that, but we got to get the leadership team. What does it look like? We want to have X amount of locations. We want to have X amount of staff. What does that look like so that people can actually visualize 3 years from now, what does that actually look like? This is still on the vision side of the page. So when we get to traction, we're bringing it down to the ground level. So now we have the 1-year plan, same top portion, but what are our goals for the year? Rocks. Rocks is an EOS term, but has anyone seen that YouTube video where a professor at the front of the class puts a jar on the desk, puts a bunch of golf balls in it? You've seen it? Anyone else seen that? All right, so I'll explain it real briefly for anyone that hasn't. Jar on the desk, fills it with golf balls, says, is the jar full? The class all says yes. And then he puts a bunch of pebbles in it, says, is the jar full now? Class says yes. Then he puts sand in, then water. Now, if you reverse that order, the golf balls don't fit. So our rocks, or the golf balls in that analogy, have to be the things that are the most important things for this next quarter to be able to hit this 1-year goal list. That's how we differentiate that. And what you'll also notice on this is who is responsible for that specific rock. There's an ownership assigned, because this process is all about accountability. A lot of times when I ask the question on a 1 to 10 scale, how accountable are you as an organization? It's usually about a 4. That's the most common answer I get, is 4. So we want to increase accountability so that everyone feels ownership as well as bought into where we're going. It's amazing. High performers always want accountability. Low performers don't like accountability. And then lastly, the issues list. This is such a powerful tool. Getting the issues out of our head frees us to be able to do a lot of different things in our head. Getting those things on a document that knows that it's off my mind, it's registered, and we're going to get to it. And then as a leadership team, what we do in our meetings is we identify, let's say number 6 that we have listed is the most important one. So we rank that number 1. And number 2 is number 2, and number 5 is number 3. We address the most important one first. Solve that at its root cause before we move to number 2. And before we move to number 5. So it's identify, discuss, solve. My leadership team, my former leadership team, before we had Alicia, a lot of discussion, very little solving. We were brilliant at that. Well, I guess this PowerPoint does go through all of them. All right, the only thing on that document, do you want this document shared by all, meaning everyone in the organization knows, except for the issues list? You'll want to keep that in the leadership team because there could be a person within the company that is on the issues list and they don't need to know that ahead of time. So, but that document should be shared with the company so that everyone knows what the big vision is and then what our priorities for the year are. And that's what it looks like to be 100% strong in that vision section. So the right people's seat. So what we do with this, names here on the left side, core values on the top line. And we're creating a metric so that you guys can do annual reviews, performance reviews, whatever it may be, based on your core values. Now you may have job competencies and stuff of that nature. Did they hit their goals that you want them to do? But really what you need to know is, are they a fit for this organization? That's the right people judgment, right? The other 3 things that we put on here, let me see if it gives us an example. Yeah, it does. So these are the 3 markers that we utilize. A plus sign for those that are majority of the time exhibiting this value, a minus sign for those that are majority of the time not exhibiting that value, and a plus minus for sometimes. So these are EOS's core values, by the way. So using those as an example. Then what you want to create here is a bar. Here's the number of pluses we want them to have and plus minuses. If they fall below that bar, they're at risk of not being here. One other thing I want to add to that that's not in here. The other thing that we do here is put GWC. G stands for do they get it? Do they get the seat that they're in? W stands for do they want it? And C, do they have the capacity? So that's the other 3 items we add to that list. So for instance, my brother worked for CDW out of college down in Chicago, and he was a really good sales guy. And they wanted to promote him to leadership, and he had seen, his managers and stuff of that nature and the stress that they take on, and they got less pay. Well, he got the job, or I should say he didn't take it because he didn't want it. So he understood it, he had the capacity, he didn't want it. And we don't want to elevate someone to that seat if they don't want it because they're not going to love what they do. So that's why we add GWC in there, is to make sure that they're a fit not only with our core values, but also do they have the competency to do the job. All right, so this structure first, people second piece. So this looks like an org chart, but it is the exact opposite of an org chart. This was the biggest struggle when I tried to implement at Northwestern. I knew I needed this person. My COO wanted to be that person, but didn't want to handle marketing and sales or recruiting. Well, those are 3 big parts of my business. So I brought in a person that was going to be in this seat. This person didn't like that because then she was reporting to her. So that was one of the biggest struggles that I had to overcome, and it took about 6 months to overcome this. But this is not a who is reporting to who per se. This is not an org chart because in a lot of scenarios, this person may be making more than this person. It's truly an accountability chart, meaning what is the right structure for the organization? So for instance, I had marketing and sales split in my organization. I also had a recruiting seat. Your organization is all going to look different. However, these 3 functions are in every organization. There's a marketing and sales function. Your teams may have it split out. There's an operations function and there's a finance function. That's existing across all businesses. It may look a little bit different. So when we get this filled out, There's 5 key roles per each seat. You as a leadership team are deciding what those 5 key roles are. And we debate, we create a list, we debate on which are the key 5 functions. The first one, if anyone is reporting to that person, is LMA, lead, manage, hold accountable. That's the first function, because if you just put that on top, that's going to encompass a lot of their roles. Now you can get really more granular on what are the next few roles that you're going to hold them accountable to. Does that make sense? What this also does is if you don't have that seat, but you see it in the future, creates a great job listing. Creates the job posting for you because you're really clear on what you want from that role. And now you're able to put that to market and say, this is what we need, and this is what we're going to hold you accountable to. So anyone that applies, hopefully they at least looked at that and be like, yeah, I'm able to do that. Then you put the name on it, do the same thing. So this actually filled out examples of what under the marketing sales might be. Again, your organization might split those 2 things because they are 2 very different things. Some people don't think so, but they are 2 very different things. But in a small business, it may be one thing at first. Until I had Alec, I was in that seat for marketing and sales. Now I fired myself from marketing. He's got that. Now I'm just in sales. And then GWC, I already explained. You can either use pluses or minuses, or yeses or nos. This is what it may look like on a more advanced structure. What I want to be really clear on is that the right people in the right seats is what Dan Sullivan calls our unique abilities. They love what they do. And the other part of it is it's their unique skill set, their gifts from God. And when we nail this, everyone's happy in their roles. Everyone knows exactly what they're accountable to do, and they love doing that work. And that's how we keep a great culture going as well. As you fill this out, though, there may be functions that you guys see or seats that you see, future tense, that you don't either have the capital for or capacity for at this time. But then you know you're working towards something over the next 12 months or 2 years, whatever it may be. All right, we were talking about people issues earlier. There's 2 kinds of people issues. Right person, wrong seat. Right person fits your culture like a glove. But they may be in the wrong seat. They're not living into those unique abilities. They either may not love the work that they're doing, or they just don't get it. It's not really their unique skill set. This person's more dangerous. The wrong person, right seat. This person is why I'm not at Northwestern anymore. I had a wrong person, right seat. Very talented, but a cancer in the culture. And it caused a lot of issues. So they're really talented. You see the good in them. You see the ability for them to bring in profit to the organization, but they're killing your culture. And long term, they're going to be a major problem for you and the business. And you may lose some good employees just because that one's still here. That person belongs on the issues list or needs to be shown the door right away. All right, if we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. The data piece, here's the scorecard as we introduce. All right, so here's the analogy I like to give when I get into a meeting room. So Josh, you're gonna get to go to a lovely vacation. You're going to an island. Sounds great, right? You get to spend a week there. The problem is this island has 0 cell service, and you cannot check your email either. So you have no way to communicate with the team. But on that island, this lovely cabana boy or cabana girl, whichever you prefer, is going to bring you your next Mai Tai and a napkin. And on that napkin is going to be the key metrics that you need to know that everything's fine back home. You don't have to worry, you can relax. And so then I just ask, what needs to be on that napkin? What are the key 5 to 15 things you need to know to make sure that you can relax and not have a worry in the world? And that's where we start to build the scorecard. Because oftentimes, again, like I said before, people are either tracking too much or not the right stuff. And this helps us get to the right stuff. But I refer to this like yoga, it's like practice, because the first time we create a scorecard, it's never right. There might be a couple things on there that are right, but over time, as things change, as you evolve, you figure out, oh, we need to sub this one out. We need to get this one in. But this is how it'll look. So we'll have the goal, and this is a weekly goal, by the way, because we want to start tracking 13 weeks of data at a time. And then we have the who owns that goal. And they're going to be subjected to reporting it each week for your executive leadership team meetings, because we need to know, are we on track or off track? And so then it'll give us our 13 weeks. In our tool, it shows up green or red. So if you're over your goal, it's going to show up green. If you're under the goal, it's going to show up red. And that gives us our historic data to make and drive decisions. The right decisions for the company based on looking at the right stuff on the scorecard. So these could be any of these things. It could be something totally different. These are just examples of the measurables some will use. Google reviews, all the different stuff. All right, moving to the bottom. The issues list we talked about a little bit already. I want to go through IDS. Like I told you before, we discuss ad nauseum. What we want to move to is identifying what the top priority is, and we're going to discuss that one and solve it at the root issue before we move to number 2. So then as a leadership team, we decide that number 1 is actually the second priority we need to address. Then we address that one, solve it at the root cause before we move to number 3. Now in that leadership time, if you guys get through 3, you just re-rank. You knock those off the list and re-rank your next 3. I've seen issues lists with 20. I've seen issues lists with 120 issues on it. Just depends on what's going on in your world, how complex your business is, and a lot about being honest with yourselves about the issues. Because most of my clients, or prior to me getting to them, it's typically running from fire to fire depending on what's going on that week. And it's just a miserable way to live. You're always stressed out. But if we can get ahead of them and actually solve them at the root cause so that they never come back, it's a much more harmonious way to live. All right, let's move to process. You typically have just a handful of core processes in every business. We just want to document them at a really high level. What we like to use is the Pareto principle. So the Pareto principle, for those that don't remember, is 20% of your clients will bring in 80% of your revenue. Process world, that doesn't work like that. What we're saying is document the 20% of the entire process, the highest level, that's going to get 80% compliance. And what are some of the tools? Have you guys ever used Loom Video? Any of you heard of Loom Video? Fantastic tool. I wouldn't even say it's an AI tool, it's just a technology. So Loom, L-O-O-M, is something, what's that?
Does it show the cursor moving?
It'll show your face in different times, but yes, it can do that for SOPs. But the other thing it'll do, let's say you wanted to go through an insurance illustration, but you can't make that call. What you can do, or assess someone's policies that you're looking to take over, you could have your face recorded on Loom, and your face shows up on the screen over the email saying, hey, you see this, 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 and this? This is what I would change if you moved over to American Family. And this is what our illustration, so it actually would give you that time back where you just created a video in 5 minutes to explain something, and they get to see your face and explanation go through their illustration. What I've used Loom for in videos or SOPs is, let's say you create a sales document and you guys, here's the process, but you want to show like a training development video. Create that video, put a hyperlink on that SOP, and now they can watch the video really seamlessly at their own leisure. One of these, I don't remember when it happened, but 25 years ago when I was a sales manager at Best Buy, even before we would start new salespeople, they'd get DVDs to watch all the training and all the sales demonstrations. Even when I was 15 years old and the busboy at Damon's, we had VHS tapes we'd pop in and watch how we clear tail. For some reason over the last 25 years, like videos have gone away to really, and we feel like we need to be hands-on with everything that we train. I think we need to get back to that and actually create videos for the basic stuff, and then we do the hands-on training for the more complex stuff. And Loom Video is just a great resource and tool to be able to utilize that. And not just your SOPs, like I was just explaining with the client. I have a headhunter who's a great friend of mine, and he'll get emailed all the time about going through someone's resume or all this stuff that he's not getting paid for, but he wants to help. He has a servant's heart. So he'll just, instead of him taking a half-hour or hour Zoom meeting with this person, he'll record himself, give him, hey, you see this on your resume? Do it like this and show him an example, and he's got his face on the screen so he still gets that personal touch, shoots him the email, and then that's off his plate. So Loom, I think it's Loom. Yeah.
Another good one like that is Bomb.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
It's basically the same thing.
I think it was pre-Loom.
Pre-Loom Loom? Yeah.
That was the first. And then Loom came out and did it better.
Yeah. That tends to happen. So whether you have a binder or a digital binder, the point is to keep your SOPs really short and to the point. Stuff that people actually want to look at, be like, hey, wait, because most people that work for you want to do their job well. So being able to create a process that's followed by everyone and knows that, and you all know as leaders, that this is going to get done the right way every time, that's the whole point of SOPs. We like to over-complexify everything and feel like we need to over-talk in our SOPs and highlight every single little thing, and it confuses the shit out of everyone. Or they just won't read it because it's too big. So this just gives us a couple examples of just keeping it real simple. So I love this quote, systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. And that's what's going to is like, let's video and SOP the simple stuff and be able to humanize the exceptional by bringing out the best in them through our human-to-human interaction. All right, and that's the last piece, is getting everyone to follow your processes so you know it's done right the right way. So here's our checklist for making sure it's followed by everyone. We got to train them. We got to measure that they're doing it correctly. Lead, manage, hold accountable. And then anytime you make any changes to SOPs, you're updating the documents. So someone's got to be responsible for that. All right, lastly, traction. So our rocks bring everything down. There's psychology behind this. Not only just that jar and rock example that I gave you, there's also a neuroscience behind it. So our brains are built as sprinters, not marathoners. So what that means to us is like there's a very distinct reason that most people fall off their annual goals or their New Year's resolutions. And it's to the tune of 80% by Feb 1. It's because the goal is too long for our brain. So what we see is we recharge in January, and then a lull for majority of the year. And then if they happen to look back at their goal and be like, oh yeah, I set out to do that, then November, December, they start pushing again. So what we really want to do is break that down to a 90-day world. Oh, that goes to meeting pulse next. So what we want to do is break that down to a 90-day world so it's sprints. There's another great book that has nothing to do with EOS, but it's called The 12-Week Year. And if you're quick at math, it's 48 weeks, not 52. What that author is saying is that you need to take a recharge rejuvenation week to get ready for your next sprint. But same principles are there. The reason behind 90-day rocks is to create sprints, so it's like a year every quarter that you're going after everything. All right, the meeting pulse. If I asked you guys on a 1 to 10 scale, how effective are your meetings with your leadership team? What would you say? So 10 being exceptional, 1 terrible. What'd you guys say? So 7 out of you, Paul? That's pretty good.
It's because the start on time, we usually don't hit it. It's part of it.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'll give you credit, because what I find in a lot of the financial services world is they will prioritize a client meeting over their team meeting. And that's a big bugaboo for me, because what it does is it deprioritizes your staff and tells them they're not as important. So there's a big purpose behind same day, same time, start on time. and end on time. And keeping the same agenda. So I'm gonna go through the agenda real quick with you, I believe. Yep, here we go. All right, so we start with good news. This is a transition, and it really sets the tone for the meeting. So it's a 90-minute meeting. This can be reduced to 60 minutes, by the way. But for your executive leadership team, for you to really dive in on issues, you need 90 minutes. So 90-minute meeting, 5 minutes is personal and professional good news. So if I was meeting with Jeff and we're on the same leadership team, we'd start off like this. What's the best piece of personal good news since we met last week? What's the best piece of professional good news? What it's allowing you to do is actually get to know your team a little better. What's considered a win in their world personally and professionally. And it just starts the tone for a good meeting right away. Scorecard review, ROC review, customer and employee headlines, all 5 minutes only. This is where a lot of people get trapped. They want to talk on the scorecard about why something's red. And we have a hard rule on that. It's like, we're not talking about that there. If you want to bring that up as an issue, we drop that down to the issues list. But this is just a reporting time. Are we on track? Are we off track? ROC review, same thing. Are we on track? Are we off track? Customer employee headlines, just a little bit different. I always think of bad examples in this, so I'm going to try and do some positive and negative. But I think about like someone got into a car accident. You know, what does everyone on the team need to know? Someone's wife got cancer. So those are my bad examples. I always go to that. Good example might be, hey, this customer just put into place a big contract with us. It's a huge win. We want everyone on the leadership team to know that, right? So it's wins and losses or just things. So my dad always taught me early on in taking over the business was like, Josh, you don't need to do everything, but you need to know everything. So I needed to know everything that was going on in the business, but it wasn't necessarily my responsibility to handle. And it was really good advice. The executive leadership team needs to know, like, for instance, if someone's wife got cancer, like everyone on the leadership team being able to know that and have sympathy for them instead of their direct superior, like getting on them when they're not necessarily doing their job, when their mind's elsewhere, like that's an important thing to know. So that's what customer and employee headlines is for, that 5-minute section. To-do list. To-do lists are 7-day windows. So anytime a to-do is assigned, there's 7 days to follow up on that, and someone owns it. So there's one person that owns it, not 2 people. If 2 people own something, no one owns it because they'll blame each other. So one person owns the to-do. That should be completed at a 90% clip. So did we get them done? And then the issues list is where we spend the bulk of our time because we want to get really productive at teeing up issues that exist and knocking them out at the root cause. So that's where we're going to spend the bulk of the time. So if something in ROC review or scorecard is amiss and one of the leaders wants to know why it's off track, we talk about it in issues. And lastly, the conclusion. So in the conclusion, what we do is we recap to-dos. Who's the owner? Is there any cascading messages? Does someone that's not in this room on the leadership team, do they need to know something that was discussed? And then lastly, you rate the meeting on a 1 to 10 scale. You want to get better and better each week at getting closer. That's why it's called a level 10 meeting. We want to rate our meetings each week at 10 if we can. Oh, and by the way, it's not if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed and you're just in a grumpy mood, so I rated it a 4. It's no, how effective were we with our time together today? That's what you're rating it on. Oh, Jeff pissed me off in this meeting, so I rated a 5. No, it's how effective were we in our time together today? So that's all 6 components. Talk through some of the foundational tools. You guys all got those, and you're going to get some of those in your bag along with the books. So these resources are great. So the first 2 foundational books, actually I'll give you 3. They're the front 3 here. Actually, no. This one, and this one. This one's more for employees. So Traction's the foundational book. Rocket Fuel goes into the visionary and integrator relationship a lot more in detail. They give you great examples like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. By the way, there was a reason that Jobs failed the first time he was at Apple is because he was trying to play both roles. So people called him an asshole. He was acting out of character because he was trying to be the integrator as well. He is a true and through visionary. Woz was the one that decided, okay, we're going to do this at this specific time. They had the idea for the iPod, the iPad, and the iPhone at the same time. Wozniak was the one that decided this is the cadence that we're going to go in and releasing them. Because Jobs was just that big of a visionary. So when Jobs came back to the company and why it blew up is Woz played the integrator role. Jobs could do what he was truly gifted at, which was be that visionary. So it gives great, was Ray Kroc, or Walt Disney and his brother Roy, and then I think there's McDonald's brothers as well, given as examples. Get a Grip's more the story of going through the EOS process with an implementer. So if you like more story form, Get a Grip is a great book. What the heck is EOS? That's for employees. So anyone that chooses to go on the EOS journey, that's more for the employees to understand what the heck the leadership team is going through. And what is this new language of rocks and level 10 meetings and stuff of that nature. And then now what EOS is starting to do is roll out books specific to each part of the 6 components. So people, process, data are released right now. That's actually not, we got to update that slide. The other thing I was telling John earlier before we spoke is EOS Worldwide has a ton of free resources. So if getting extra copies of the VTO, stuff of that nature, like you guys can go on eosworldwide.com, download these tools, whatever it may be. What I will tell you is that, like I said, it's really hard to be facilitator and participant, like I tried to do when I had my other company. So if, like, ask questions of me and like what that would look like, or just hiring someone. But regardless of what you do, every business needs a system. There are other systems out there. I've researched them all. I chose to go with EOS because it was the original. Everything seemed to spin off from that. And I just have loved the progress, all the teams that I've worked with, seeing them grow leaps and bounds in their leadership ability, their organization, rating their meetings much higher than a 4, which is the average that we get, the accountability that they're feeling, and just the freedom from not being completely married to their business at all times. Like they can live a life outside of their business, which is huge. And that's that get what you want. So we always ask that question, it's like, what do you want from me? Like you started this business, but what do you want out of it at the end of the day? What do you want right now while you're running it? And what do you want out of it when you decide to transition it? It's like, why not start living that life now instead of waiting to the point that you transition it? And so we're constantly talking about that to see how we can better the life of the people that we're working with. So this is someone out of Minnesota that I don't work with, but I've never felt so alive and in control. I own the vision of for my future and the ability to share it with others and get them on board. So a lot of fun stuff. I'll close it with that, so answer any questions. This is stuff that I get a lot of joy in helping people do. I thought I was just going to do leadership coaching because that's my jam. And then getting into this work, being able to blend it, the leadership stuff, with the systems and processes has been immensely rewarding. And so it's been a lot of fun to continue to work with companies, speak across the nation. I always tell people, it's like, I'm not a speaker, even though I go on stages a lot. I'm a coach. But what happens is when I speak, I get to impact larger numbers of people. So, and then hopefully coaching relationships come from that. But it's been a fun journey. I never thought I'd be doing it. Thought I was going to be with Northwestern forever, at least till I retired. And it's been a joy of mine to continue to pour into people and their leadership teams. And it's taught me so much at the same time. So I'll take any questions and see where you guys' heads are at. I know that was a fire hose of information.
So when you're talking about goal setting, like quarterly, annually, 3-year, 7-year, 10-year, what have you, how often are you revisiting and reanalyzing those goals and making sure that you're staying on track, or if you need to make a change?
Yeah, we won't do it on the quarterly because we want to stay laser focused on the goal, because we do a 2-day annual planning. So to give you perspective, what the EOS process looks like is I typically do a 90-minute Zoom with the leadership team and explain a lot of what we just did today. And then we go into focus day, vision building day 1, vision building day 2, and then there's quarterly meetings along with the 2-day annual. So a lot of what we do for planning is on that 2-day annual, and we wouldn't want to screw up that planning to change midstream in a year. That's a lot of times what leaders can get wrong, is they change directions midstream on people, and that'll frustrate your team. So we want to make sure that we stay focused for that year on the goals that we set. And that tenure at that year planning mark, on that annual planning mark, that may change if something in the business drastically changes, but oftentimes it doesn't. It's more like the North Star. And just so everyone's reference, your yearly goals, you should hit at an 80% clip. Those those long-term ones, those are only hit at a 50% clip. But what happens is if you set the BHAG large enough, is that you're going to get a lot closer and a lot further along to that big number, even if you don't hit it. It's like, okay, I set a revenue number for 10 million. That's the BHAG. Versus setting at 5 because that's more realistic, and you just hit the 5 versus if you set it at 10 and hit 7.1, you're probably going to be a little bit happier with the 7.1 than you were for the 5 because you set that vision big enough. So you didn't hit it, but you're a lot further along than you would have been if you had played it safe. So typically we're only addressing that long-term vision on the annual planning. And then we back into the 3-year. Where do we need to be in 3 years to be on track for that 10-year? And we just double check that each time. Is the 3-year picture right? Is the 10-year vision right? And then we start setting those 1-year goals again. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You bet.
If you're meeting with one leader of an organization and they're thinking like, wow, I want to bring this back and start to potentially implement this, what's your suggestion on how to get initial buy-in from the other members of the leadership team, and what components of this do you show them, and maybe what exercise do you run them through?
That 90-minute workshop. Because so basically what I do typically is have a introductory call with the leader and say this, they have either read the book or they have some inclination of what EOS is, but the team may not, right? Just kind of to your example. And so I say, get them on the 90-minute, and what I'll do is get to know you guys at a high level. You guys get to know me, and then I run them through a lot of what we spoke of today so that they can see what the process is going to entail, how this will clarify the organization, how they'll be more clear on everything that's going to go forward, role clarity, goal clarity, all the different things. And then you guys reconvene as a leadership team and say, are we on board to do this or not? That 90 minutes solves everything because they can get all the rundown. And that's totally free. Yeah, we do that for free to make sure that everyone knows what the heck they're getting into.
So clarification, Josh, on the level 10 meetings, you're soliciting that feedback from the team with the score of the meeting. How are you doing that?
At the end of the meeting, it's a good question, and actually it leads me to a point that I didn't mention, is let's say someone rates it a 7 and you thought it was a 9. Always ask that person what would have made it better. Because then you're getting to know them, like, do they need a more direct style, or was I too harsh on them? So like, what was the reason they rated it lower today? So it's always the last thing you do at the end of the meeting, because again, you're grading it on how effective we were as a team today in solving issues. Because if we did at the beginning of the meeting, it's going to be based on how they woke up that day. Do it at the end of the meeting. How did we do in our 90 minutes together? Some people get annoyed with that question, but you always want to know. It's like soliciting that feedback. It's like, okay, what would have made this better for you? And vice versa, you give them the permission. If you rated it a 6, like, hey, Jeff, what would have made it better for you? Because I work with a lot of high achieving teams, and it's like, well, like, we don't give anything a 10. I'm like, great, we'll rate it on a 1 to 11 scale then. Because the point is, like, it's not about being perfect, it's about it being effective. And so sometimes you may only solve one issue, but it was a really big issue. Give yourselves a 10. It's not about a competition of did we solve 10 issues today or 1. If one really big issue needed a lot of discussion, we solved that at the root cause and that's going to go away forever, that's a 10 in my books. It's just, and it takes practice just like anything else. So typically when I do a focus day and we wait 30 days before we do vision building 1 and then another 30 days, like that first 30 days, I'm not giving a ton of instruction. I give them the layout of how it's supposed to look, and then they go and do it. And then on that vision building day 1, I go, okay, how are your level 10s? They're like, oh, it's messy. Like, we spent too much time here. We did this wrong. We did this wrong. I'm like, okay, well, now we know what to fix. Do we need to spend any more time, any clarifying questions? And then the next 30 days, I sit in on one as like a fly on the wall to observe how they're running the meeting so that I can give them feedback and pointers and, hey, don't get stuck here. Sometimes the leader's being a little too political. And like, hey, this is for open and honest dialogue because you're not going to solve an issue if you don't. Is someone being too quiet and not voicing their opinion? Getting them to speak up to make sure that their voice is heard and important. Like sometimes I'll just play that fly and at the end of the meeting, give them that feedback and make sure they're moving that in the right direction.
For the issues, is that all just like company and personnel issues, or can it be like external issues too?
Typically, it's going to be professional. That being said, if there's a personal like issue with an employee or something of that nature, are you thinking?
No, I'm like, let's say some law changes or something, and we have to do something different.
Oh, that's an issue.
Like, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's for sure an
It's
issue.
not our company issue, but it's like going to change the way we have to do something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's for sure an issue.
Okay, all right.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely going to be on the list, and it's an important one to figure out how you're going to navigate the new law or whatever it may be. I was thinking like if it was a personal issue, like someone had this going on in their personal life, that'd be in the customer employee headlines. Yeah, that's a great question.
Companies that you've seen implement this and have it work at a high level. I mean, I think you kind of addressed. I'm assuming the 90-minute workshop is probably like the place to start. But what's the one thing that you should focus on in the start of the implementation of it? Because I mean, I'm self-admission, all the bad habits, right? Like, how do you break out of that?
Accountability chart's the first spot. Get everyone role clarity and what they're going to be held accountable to. So we refer to that as the master tool for the leadership team. Most people want to know what they're measured on to do a good job. In small companies, we're wearing multiple hats, right? All right, now like I went from having 250 employees to 3 including me, right? So we're all wearing multiple hats and doing a lot of different things. But what are the 5 core things that I'm going to be held responsible for come performance review, week to week, stuff of that nature? Because then that shows us our priority list of, okay, these are the most important things. Even when I hired my first assistant when I was starting out as a financial advisor, like I had to give her 3 core things that I was expecting of her. Like these are my top 3 priorities. And beyond that, there's going to be a litany of to-dos. But these are the 3 things that are most important to me as her boss. Right, so getting that role clarity or the structure of it, and then also what the top 5 roles are in each box. That's the biggest thing. The other tools are really going to be ancillary beyond that. How to delegate and elevate is a big tool that I teach. It's funny, I hear a lot of speakers because I share a lot of stages now talk about delegate and elevate, but they never tell you how to do it. They say, you got to delegate. Cool. I've been wanting to do that for years. So there is an actual tool that we utilize for delegation so that you can get right to your most needed seat, and that so all of your other leaders can start doing the same. What are thoughts, questions? Greg?
Balance on the people analyzer section, right? Thinking about a team, you've got your core values and then a rating system, and then you've got GWC. How do you balance those two, right? Because GWC is more general,
Yeah.
right? But still kind of tied to the core values, whereas core values really what we've written down potentially, right? Like how do you balance?
Yeah, that sun's right in his eyes.
I'm getting a little suntan, right?
So that's a good question. So the values are really, are they the right person? And then the right seat is the GWC.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Now, hopefully you have yes, yes, yes. Right? And if one's a no, what do we got to work on? If it's a want it thing, that's probably not going to be the seat for them. But if it's a get it or capacity thing, what do we have to do training and development to get them to the spot that we need them in that seat for? I found majority of business owners, and again, it's time, I get it because I'm in the same boat, don't spend enough time training and development of their people. And or they haven't delegated that task to this or given that responsibility to their other leaders to be able to build those other people up. And so a lot of times it is that training and development, that extra hand on the shoulder. But even so, like with technology nowadays, I was working with this financial advisory team, big team out of Des Moines, and the top advisor, seeing more complex cases than his junior advisors, and he can't bring them with him everywhere to get that hands-on experience. I was like, how many times a week do you see a case that they haven't seen before? And he's like, probably 5 times. Okay, cool. How about on Mondays, you just do an hour-long meeting where you just discuss what was going through your head as you saw this case. And secondly, record it. So now it's evergreen content. You discussing it once that they can go back to, and any other junior advisor that you bring on the team, now you have this library of how your thought process works, what was the unique case, and how you solve those problems. A lot of times we're just not thinking outside the box to create that evergreen content that can help them just go, okay, I don't need to spend this time. Like, hey, go watch this video. Let me know what questions you have as you come out of it. So it's really good. One thing I thought of that I didn't discuss, a lot of times people ask, where does EOS not work? So there's 2 places that EOS doesn't work. One is pretty obvious, it's publicly traded companies. So shareholders control the decisions in publicly traded companies. The leadership team usually loses control of their decisions. So that's one place EOS won't work. The other place, not as obvious, but it'll become obvious when I say it, but is egotistical leaders. And it's interesting to see, most people that are egotistical don't necessarily know or think they're egotistical. It's people unwilling to change, people unwilling to let go of the vine, especially if it's the owner of the company. I had one really awful meeting, was that a year and a half ago? Guy had his daughter on the leadership team and his soon-to-be ex-wife. So it was already a messy situation coming into it. That day should have been a sitcom, actually. We get through the accountability chart, which we handle on Vision Building Day 1. And he goes, so like literally we have the seats built out, the structure built out, and the names on the seats. And he goes, none of these people are ready for that. I was like, come again? We literally just spent all this time building this out. You all came together and said, this is the right person for that seat. And you also started the day with saying that I'm overwhelmed and I can't handle all these things and I need to start handing things off. And now you're saying that none of these people are ready for that. The rest of that day didn't go well. And I've never seen him again. But it showed me that right then and there that, and by the way, I was expecting not to get paid that day. And they ended up paying me anyhow. So they got enough value, but they never showed up again. And it was really eye-opening to go, okay, I needed to do more fact-finding to determine if this leader was truly willing to let go of the vine and let some of his people get built up and take ownership over those seats. And he just wasn't. And he's owned the business for 30 years. It's a $50 million company, like great company, just wasn't willing to let him. He's traveling all over the world in manufacturing space and wasn't willing to let go of anything. So he's going to run his head into the wall for the rest of his career, I guess. But yeah, those are the 2 spots that EOS won't work. Yeah, Josh?
When you work with somebody, how often do you work with them?
So this is the structure. So it's going to be the immersion phase in the first 90 days are those 3 meetings. First one, focus day, wait 30 days for Vision Building Day 1, then wait 30 days for Vision Building Day 2. Then it's just quarterly cadence. And so with that being said, myself and then my integrator, Alicia, who's world-class, anytime in between them, there's questions like my phone's open, my email's open. It's just, you guys got a job to do to run at those rocks. So it's a function of let you be and do your thing. We come back together, reassess, make sure that we're on track and introduce a new tool to build into the business. But yeah, it's a great cadence. So what you guys saw on the screen, I didn't touch on it, but it's called Meeting Pulse. So not only your level 10 meetings, but also the quarterly cadence with the 2-day annual, it becomes the heartbeat of your organization. It's like just doing that over and over again. So with EOS, I always talk about, hey, I'm a coach, not a consultant. So I'm not trying to be on payroll forever. My job is to teach you this so that you know it as good as I do and run with it from there. And then, so you won't need me at the end of 2 years. That's the goal. Some teams do it faster, some teams slower. By the way, it's not a race for you competitive people. It's a skill set, it's a knowledge base to really grasp. And at the end of 2 years, if that's what it takes, then if you want me, cool, but you're not going to need me. And that's the promise, is to make sure that I just equip you to know all this stuff that makes your business better, makes your life better. And then a lot of teams retain me for the 2-day annual. They don't necessarily need me for the quarterlies. They just like that outside perspective in the room, help them structure a meaningful 2 days, and then the quarterlies they run on their own. What I always suggest, though, is for those that choose to optimize the system is like, if you run your quarterlies with your executive leadership team, what I suggest is like an all-team or all-company meeting shortly thereafter, so you guys can discuss what the next 90-day rocks are. I always tell the leader, whoever's going to position, give them the vision over and over again. So no matter what your title is in this room, if it's CEO, CFO, COO, whatever the title is, you're all CROs. Not Chief Recruiting Officer, Chief Reminding Officer. So there's a study that was done, and by the way, for any of you that are parents, you know this, you're the Chief Reminding Officer over and over again. Study done in the 70s, I can't remember the name offhand who did it, but they did a study on parenting effectiveness techniques. And they came to the conclusion that you need to repeat yourself 7 times for someone to hear it the first time. They redid that study 15 years ago. How many times do you think you got to repeat yourself nowadays? 35. Squirrel, because we have so many inputs and so many things coming at us at any given time. I mean, the advent of the cell phone and the pings, and actually it all started with BlackBerry with that damn red flashing light. Got to clear that. But that's the problem nowadays, is like we think we've communicated, and we have, but they haven't heard it yet. It hasn't landed yet. So the Chief Reminding Officer thing I bring up over and over again, because I play the Chief Reminding Officer for anyone that I'm working with, to remind you that anytime you do those quarterly meetings with the all team, it's share the vision again, share the values again, share the core things that you're doing again. And in the vision piece, I say, start with this framework. Here's where we've been, here's where we're at, here's where we're going. And just repeat that structure over and over again, so they just know that messaging inwards and outwards. You'll know when you've been heard, because any of you that have kids, you'll know this as well. You know you've been heard when they start mocking you. And an insecure leader goes, they're making fun of me. A secure leader goes, you finally hear me.
Again, back to buy-in. How important is it for leadership members of the team or the entire team, I guess depending on what's being disseminated to everybody, to actually read the book?
Leadership team should read the book, and they should want to. I've never had any pushback when someone said, we're going to go through with this. Like, I've never had anyone on the leadership team or the CEO tell me, yeah, this person didn't want to do it, because if they didn't, they'd probably kick them off the leadership team knowing that they're not bought in or not coachable or going to be a problem anyway. So I've never had that issue. What I do suggest with the general employees is just pick up that What the Heck is EOS book and just have it laying around the office, a few copies. By the way, if you go to Vortex, one of the things you'll see, which is really cool, so Joe Hamilton, the CEO, who's a friend, they have these little libraries all over their campus. And it's like Joe's favorite books. And he just buys a bunch of them that he loves, puts them in those libraries, and the employees can grab them as they want. So it's just building a culture of growth within your organization. So reading's always a part of that. Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. So just keep that in mind. I've never had any pushback at the executive leadership team level not being willing to dive into at least that book, especially if you're going to take it on. And I'm pretty good at sales too, so I could sell them on the importance of knowing what they're getting into.
I had my team read the book Traction a couple of years ago, and it was all good stuff, but the only thing we ultimately took away and started implementing was IDS.
Which is a good one. It's a good takeaway.
Yeah, and so in our meetings, we identify issues, we discuss it, and talk about what we're going to do to solve it as a team, and it's been good.
The accountability chart is really a great takeaway as well. And then the VTO, it's just a power, like I always tell, if I ever get on a phone call and they choose not to work with me, which is fine, that happens just like any of us in business. But I'm like, I always say, like, if you don't work with me, please steal this. Because this is a great tool for everyone to have in front of their face and know exactly where we're going, exactly who we are and what represent, and who owns what as far as rocks are concerned. So I always leave them with that, is like, please steal that tool because it's a great one. Yeah. Any other questions, or are we ready to have some fun?
Yeah, one more question.
Yeah.
Around goal setting, like, there's so many different thought processes to go through that. The one that I always hear and like more than any of them is set your goal so high that your stomach hurts. But when you do that, your team is generally like, we don't want our stomach to hurt every single day. So, would you rather set attainable goals for your team or uncomfortable goals? I mean,
I like slightly uncomfortable, not stomach hurt. The stomach hurt one should be the 10-year vision. That one, everyone should go, whoa. But that's what the visionary can see. And we can back into 3 years and 1 year to make it become a reality. Because we can put all the math behind it, be like, if we do this year, and at the end of 3 years we do this, we're going to be well on pace for that momentum to do that. And then they see it, right? Actually, I'll finish my point, and then I want to bring up another tool for you guys. The 1 year ones, you should think about 80% to 100% hit rate. And they should be growth oriented, but they should be smart. So specific, measurable, attainable, relevant timetable. Timetable we have, right? 12/31/25. But now, do we have the other SMAR? So they should be growth, or like we should be having a communication of, hey guys, we're not going to stay stagnant. Because my dad always taught me we're either green or growing or ripe and rotting. And that was like a nursery rhyme. And that's true in business as it is in life. If we don't use it, we lose it. If we don't continue to grow, we're falling off, or our competitors are catching up. So we have to grow. That being said, what's a specific, measurable, attainable, relevant goal for this metric? And then that's what you discuss as a leadership team, because you say, I'm just going to use random numbers, but let's say you say 15 million for revenue, and the rest of the leadership team's at 12. Do you argue it to split it down the middle at 13 and a half and then back into that for 90-day rocks? I mean, those are the discussions we have and really say, because here's the other thing about Jobs Wozniak. Jobs wanted to do all three at once. Woz, the integrator, knew what marketing and sales were capable of. He knew what technology operations was capable of, and he knew what the finance department was capable of, because the integrator's talking to all those people, the visionary's typically not. So by the way, in a meeting, like in a, whether it's your L10 or in a quarterly or whatever that I might be sitting there for, the tiebreaker always goes to the integrator. So if the leadership team is deadlocked, the integrator wins. Whatever the integrator says. It's not the visionary, even if the visionary is the owner and the integrator is an employee, the integrator knows all the things that are happening all beneath. So the integrator is the tiebreaker. Which brings me to that other tool I want to give you guys for free. So if you go to rocketfuel.com, there's a crystallizer assessment. It's free. And you can tell what percentage visionary you are versus what percentage integrator you are. And I'll give you guys the stats on it. There's actually one person that I know of in the Madison area that falls into this 1% stat, and her name's Judith Faulkner. Less than 1% of the population is visionary and integrator, 80% or better. Judith happens to fall into that. She had the vision, and she was able to integrate. Now, that being said, she still hired Carl to be in that integrator seat, and she stayed the visionary, because it's really hard to be in both seats, especially when you're scaling a company like that. Less than 7% of the population, or about 7%, are visionary. I'm sorry, less than 7 are integrators. 7%, integrators are less than visionaries. About 11% are true visionaries. The rest of the population falls into somewhere in the middle. And what you want to see on that score is 80% above, which one are you? So if you're strong, so I'm a 96% visionary. That's why I need a, what's that?
It's rocketfueluniversity.com.
Okay, thank you. Crystallizer assessment, rocketfueluniversity.com. Yeah, Elon probably owns rocketfuel.com. And Rocket Man and anything else. So yeah, that's a great free assessment. You can tell where you're at if you have someone on your team that you might be considering for integrator, or Jeff, like you and Corey, it'd be interesting to see where you two shook out, which one of you is more of which. But yeah, it's a great tool. I need a really strong integrator because my mind is all visionary. So for those of you that are visionaries like me, it's finding that right fit. By the way, the right fit typically comes from a COO seat, a CFO seat, or a high-end executive assistant. Those are where integrators typically come from. Almost never from sales and marketing. Their brains think more like visionaries. And so I have some headhunting firms that I've deployed for finding integrators because they are super important to any company structure. I just started working with a client that one of their CEOs, there's two partners, happens to be part of that illustrious 1%, and they're choosing what seat he's going to go into right now. But it's also not a competition to be in that illustrious 1%. It's like you want to be who you are. If you're a visionary, be the visionary. If you're an integrator, be the integrator. That's the key, because that's your unique skill set. So yeah. Have some fun. Thanks, sir.